Click links to join the channel here over at SubScribestar. Thanks for everyone over at Throne and using the mailbox. Send me that unusual flashlight. So Fund My Comic has got Cecil's Cash Grab too. Orange is the new fat. And from what I can tell, it looks like a parody, a lampoon of current affairs. And I don't know, Cecil. I'm not getting anything from this. I looked at it and it looked absolutely friggin' fantastic. And the story is you got kicked off of Indiegogo because the comic parodies current affairs, and there's recently been some current affairs that some sacred cows that are very, very sacred, and they're not allowed for you to poke fun at. And I'm surprised he decided to go there and just take everything that's happened in the past few years and just, turn it up to 11. And Indiegogo did not think that was funny because they take all these things very seriously, the BLT thing and the tunnels and whatnot. And it's, it's kind of interesting to watch Cecil over the years, his slowly moving to the right. A lot of people who are kind of in the middle have just been forced to move to the right because Clown World is accelerating so fast to the left. And the other piece of news is I would guess we're only a few years away, maybe 5 years away from people being able to make full-length, 90-minute watchable movies on their own for the budget of their time, which is, is still something, but it's not $50 million to make a low-budget movie. It's more like take a year of using AI and a group of people to make a movie for, $50,000 using AI and then cleaning it up. So when that happens, you'll be able to make movies of anything you want. And like, what happens with the future of Hollywood? Well, if people are tired of woke Hollywood and you have a new industry that pops up where people are making non-woke movies, well, that's probably the end of Hollywood. So why don't modern stories matter? Rings of Power is back for another season, third season at Amazon. And there's an article about why Hollywood stories are lacking soul. They're failing to resonate with the viewer. And he uses Rings of Power as an example, though there's, I'm sure, a bunch of others. And it's a great example for everything except for failing, except for the technical stuff, the sets and the lighting, all that stuff is amazing. It's just the narrative that is ridiculous. And a lot, it kind of feels like what a waste of current technology, hardware, and skill. Even though I don't agree with these people politically, they're far left nut jobs. They still have skill. They could make a good movie if someone put them under the whip hand and said, we're going to make movies like the 80s. And they could. And you'd make movies and you'd be successful using all the CGI you have and the sets and all the talent you have out there. Instead, they make this kind of garbage that nobody watches. So if you look at movies presently and those a decade or two ago when things really started to accelerate, current movies are obviously falling flat. And you can look at the Lord of the Rings films by Peter Jackson and others from pre-2010-ish, I guess. I mean, Trump derangement syndrome played a large part in that as well. So why was there an emotional connection with the original or similar vibe films like Troy and Gladiator? There was a bunch of movies from, I was going to say from the 90s to 2010, but I mean, really, it's just pre-2010. And I have to ask, if you're taking crazy pills, let's just turn off the political correctness filter for a moment to the extent our lizard puppet masters, shape-shifting demons from beyond time and space over at Google will allow us. Compare the modern to 20 years ago, side by side. Well, the originals had actors playing the roles who visually fit the roles without destroying the suspension of disbelief. In the movies, you had elves, hobbits, dwarves, who are all of their individual tribes, or you had a history piece with a bunch of Greeks running around. The actors are not actually Greeks necessarily, or definitely not hobbits, but they're all roughly within the same ethnic group to not be able to tell the difference. Take a Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, Greek, even some mixed Arabs, and you can all put them together in a movie as a tribe, and it looks okay. They would fit. They would just fit in as all the different Hobbit clans, the Stouts and Harfoots and whatever, spread out in the Shire. Some might be a shade darker, but they look like they belong together because they look the way they do because they had the same evolutionary environment, like humans do. Or for the elves, you get a bunch of skinny, blonde Northern Europeans, and they all look like they're a clan of elves. They fit together. There's nothing visually to take you out of the story. No glaring inconsistencies like a black, Indian, Chinese, whatever, vomited upon the screen to fit a diversity quota. We have no diversity quota. The Lord of the Rings is based on the people of Europe. They have to be European people. This isn't rocket science. The other thing I would say as a compromise is, speaking about somebody who was talking about The Wiz the other day, is if you were making this for a Chinese audience, take the story and make them all Chinese. If you're making it for a black audience, then just make them all black. And that would make sense because that's the kind of the big concept between globalism and nationalism. But the left-wing globalists can't have any nationalism, even if it was black or Chinese. They have to have globalism. That means forced diversity. So the globalists at Amazon have a religious belief that humans are fungible, that a Chinese can play the role of an Irish, but the audience is not addicted to cocaine and baby blood. We know that the Irish are a unique, discrete ethnic group. So the casting has to reflect people who look like they belong together. A Chinese actor cannot play the role of a hobbit because, and I can't believe I have to say something so obvious, but a Chinese or sub-Saharan or whatever is physically different from the Europeans who are supposed to play the role. Because, and follow me here, the Europeans are a different race from the Asians or sub-Saharans or Middle Easterners, and thus they visually look different. May I draw your attention to skin tone, hair, eye color, and the shapes and noses? A child could point this out, and I would love to hear their reasoning why a non-European is in the role in the first place. How does a black actor play the role of a Scandinavian-based elf? Now, the left wing will have their reasoning, their Frankfurt School buzzwords about Larry Fink's inclusion and modernizing it. But those are their personal beliefs based on their political religion of Bolshevism, and the audience doesn't share those beliefs. We want to see the story as close to the spirit as the original because we don't share the values of those lizard globalists because they're parasites. Amazon, in making the show woke, is saying that their creative talent, that their writers are better than the source material. Unfortunately, this is obviously not true. The writers of the show would probably admit that if they were being honest, but they're paid to do a job, so they do it. This isn't a complex line of argument here. Tolkien was a master storyteller. We're talking about him right now because he was such a master. There's nobody at Amazon at his level. There's nobody alive today at Tolkien's level. Because if there were, they would have written their own books. Nobody on Earth did what Tolkien did because he did it, not the political commissars at Amazon. It's weird that I have to say this, these very obvious things. Tolkien was a rare master. Nobody at Amazon is even close. So the best Amazon could do was follow the spirit of Tolkien as closely as possible. Like Peter Jackson said he did in the interviews with his other directors, not insert their own political bias. This, though, they screwed the pooch on The Hobbit, but he wasn't involved with that in the beginning. The article mentions that things in rings don't have stakes or they don't feel like they do because the totality of the show crossed the event horizon of, believability, the willing suspension of disbelief. It only goes so far. If I see a group of mixed-race hobbits, nothing else in the story is going to matter. It's like when they say, if you believe a man is a woman, then no other argument that comes from you is valid. It becomes a conscious effort to suspend disbelief. And why would we? It's not as if there's a shortage of European actors. Why didn't you just hire all European actors who look like they logically belong to the same tribe? Because there is no tribe that organically has an English and a sub-Saharan character or an Indian or a Chinese all together as a clan. The viewer knows that this is developmentally disabled, and done because the vermin at Amazon are globalists who need to destroy everything European, everything pure and white that their betters created, because people like Tolkien are gods to them. All they have to do is write their own fresh fantasy story. You don't even need the legal rights to Lord of the Rings. Just start a new fictional universe. He got a lot of his ideas from earlier stories, which he freely admitted in interviews. In fact, he even took the names from earlier stories to honor them. And if they want to make it diversity propaganda, Shadowfax, I think, was one of them. They're free to make as much propaganda as they want, just make it original. But taking the work of their betters, these Ubermensch in their eyes, Tolkien, and twist it and make it foul for the purpose of making a political message is not attractive to the audience. And the numbers are reflecting that, and it's not just Amazon. Disney's having their own, well, they can't have a come to Jesus moment because they would spontaneously combust. But now the left wing hears this and they can't hear my reasons and accept it as one opinion on why Rings of Power is a failure. They can't argue against the points. Their whole framework is to ad hominem the speaker and straw man. So what you're saying is, XYZ, and what you are is XYZ, but none of those things are relevant. The customer is telling the seller why these shows are crap. There is no counterpoint to this. There's nothing they can say. Res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. There's nothing some political commissar SJW can say that will change the show or make the audience suddenly change their mind and want to watch globalist propaganda. We, the customers, are explaining to Amazon, hey, the problem is the race swapping, the diversity, to some extent the girl power. She just feels like the wrong actor for the role. She comes across as like a passive-aggressive, bitchy girlfriend on her period. And she's, I don't know if I should say this, she's not quite lean enough. She has a little bit of a double chin for the role of an elf. Like in The Hobbit when that other guy gained some weight. I want my elves like chiseled jawline and cheekbones. So the article mentions that things in the story don't have stakes because it's not Tolkien's universe, it's Amazon's, and it's fake. It's a twisted, dark mirror that is an abomination of the original. Humans and their fictional character counterparts form connections, and race and degrees of kinship is the key element. It's the core. It's even deeper than religion. The religion or ideology is the software running on the hardware of ethnicity. The connections between people vibrate at a frequency that determines civilization. The Shire makes sense because it's an English village full of English people who are a distinct ethnic group. They share haplotype groups, degrees of kinship. The villages of the hobbits have a vibe that is based on a small European village life 100 years ago when he wrote the story, when he was raised. And people all roughly share traits that are within that envelope because they're in proximity to each other and under the same environmental selection pressures. They might have blonde, red, dark, or mixed hair and slight variations in skin tone, but they all look like they belong together. I can't believe we're at this point in Weimar where I say someone from an environment south of the Sahara is visually different from the UK people. They're two different races made up of several different sub-ethnicities. They have nothing in common, and the evidence is the societies they built completely different and adapted to the environment where they belong. I think the problem is not enough people just say these very blunt, obvious things. I mean, to the extent the platforms will allow you, and yes, it's only a matter of time, I accept that. A Chinese woman is not an Irish woman, or, oh no, the $2 a day, or a man for that matter. And yet to point out ethnic differences will trigger the SJW kids because they desperately need to virtue signal about something, even if they're wrong. There are no stakes in modern movies because they're not movies. They're just globalist propaganda pushing a heavy-handed message in everything. Dear Hollywood, it's okay to make movies with just European people in them. The audience doesn't value diversity or vagina power. We just want the original story. The other thing is, I say Hollywood should just make new diverse stories if they value that kind of cancer. Obviously, I don't. But it probably wouldn't sell because there are no diverse fantasy. I mean, here's the thing. I could write a diverse story that sells. Well, what? You just said it doesn't work. It doesn't work when you don't treat people equally. They treat people equitably, which is just Frankfurt School nonsense. That means you have to, all the characters have to do good things and bad things as a team. You can't have Mary Sue characters because they have darker skin than the other characters. That's pandering. It's like in that, what was it, The Witches? The book by Roald Dahl was made into a movie with Anne Hathaway, I think. It was a little black kid and I don't know, where two little other kids as sidekicks, but the little black kid solved every puzzle in the movie. He did everything. You look at the other kids and like, this is a teamwork thing, right? They turn into mice and whatnot. They're all supposed to work together. And I mean, it's so obvious when you look at it, it's embarrassing, but that's Hollywood. The thing is, there are no diverse Fantasyland settings, in that kind of folklore. The indigenous people of Europe created, and that bothers SGWs for some reason, created stories based on their people, and they were all European. Same for the Arabs, Africans, Asians. They all have stories, but they're all based on their people unless they're fighting the outsiders. So when Hollywood comes up with diverse stories, they're political propaganda, and the audience is not interested. The narrative in Hollywood is that ancestral connections, history, pride, in-group preferences is not a concern for the people of Europe. But for all other people, it is a concern, which seems like why would you think that is? It's as if the globalists in Hollywood want to change the history of the European people to cut them off from their accomplishments, the unique greatness of the members of their race, to make their history everyone's history, but they don't erase any other people of the world. It's really odd. It's like Hollywood is part of a machine to remove a people from existence, to focus hatred against one group and one group only, and to simultaneously subvert their accomplishments. It's like the amazing things the European people have done is immortized, is that the right word? Spread out among the world. The accomplishments are shared to people who didn't do them, but the negatives they didn't do are blamed on them alone, to the point that Hollywood will make a gaslighting movie about the Dahomey tribe, where in the real world, the French and English had to go to war to stop the Africans selling other Africans, I think to South America or something. But the Hollywood version seemed to forget that aspect. The human trade started long before European contact and continued after Europeans ended their part in it. If anything, the blacks taught the Europeans the slave industry. Anyway, why modern stories in general don't matter is because they're not making organic stories, they're just making propaganda. The themes of Hollywood movies are not in accord with reality. There is some weird left-hand path inverted world where blonde men are running inner city gangs, flying airplanes into standing structures, Epsteining kids on islands, and snuggling women and deleting children. They're throwing coins in the air and having them land on the edges every time. Hollywood is the blonde man statistical improbability. It stretches credibility. Watching them. Here's an esoteric example, because you probably didn't see the movie, the Birds of Prey movie with Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie. They had a bunch of fight scenes with the vaguely, ambiguously Portuguese, pirate, Mediterranean, brownish thugs who the girls are fighting, who usually have hats or shaved heads, so they can't be identified. Watch that movie again if you can stand it, and make a physical description of pro and antagonist. So really do that with anything you watch nowadays, especially commercials. Commercials are amazing. The audience doesn't get to the point of even caring about the stakes, why things don't have gravitas, when the willing suspension of disbelief is broken with every character. Nobody cares about Rings of Power because the non-European actors destroy the story. They take you out of the universe and tell you that you're watching Hollywood propaganda, Larry Fink-approved pieces of anti-white cancer. It's the signal of woke virtue that is drowning out the noise of the storyline. Here's what you do. Just race swap out all the nons and put in actual European people who fit the story, and you'd have success. Oh, that's so easy. But you can't do that. Well, I mean, you could. I just explained how you do it. You just race all the non-European characters. Yeah, you just get rid of them. And you should probably do that in Hollywood for movies coming up. Like, is there some black Captain America movie? Yeah, I want you to race swap him out with some white actors. And they look at you like, obviously, you're taking crazy pills. It's like, no, Nick Fury is not black. Most of these actors are not black, or the characters don't even exist. But anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.